and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who is not a high school teacher, but he's 2/3 of the way through his grading.
Wow.
His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello and accurate. Well done. I am indeed 2/3 of the way through.
So if you listened to yesterday's show, you will know that we are doing Premier League midterm reports. We're giving grades to each and every Premier League team. We're going alphabetically through. This is the middle part. We're going to go through Everton through to Manchester City.
You got it.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. I sounded really certain, right?
You really did, yes. To the point where I was a little concerned that maybe you had not researched one of the teams that we're going to be talking about.
Well, there was a bit of an alphabetical mix-up earlier on, but we fixed it. We fixed it.
Obvious, but still worth clarifying. If you're looking for the first part of our Premier League mid-season reviews, that would be the show most recent to this one.
Yeah, and I did feel like yesterday when we did it, it felt like we went too light on our students, too light on these Premier League teams. A lot of very generous grades, but I realised that's because we hadn't done Huddersfield or Fulham yet.
Yep. I'm going to say the grades for this one slightly harsher and then way better by the end. Yeah,
that sounds good. That sounds good. All right, should we get going then?
Let's do it then.
Let's start with Everton Football Club. What's your grade, Taylor? And briefly tell me why, and then we'll trade back and forth.
Sure. Everton, currently 11th in the table on 27 points. I've got them with a C, a straight-up C for me.
Why so?
Because after it seemed like it was kind of a good start, it seemed like Marco Silva had them on the right track. Since beating Cardiff on November 24th, 1 win, 2 draws, 5 losses. Admittedly, those losses included Liverpool, City, Tottenham.
All right.
But then you've got Brighton and Leicester in there. Those are teams that I think Everton should be expecting to beat.
I feel like you're just telling me the score. So why is it a C?
Sure. It's because in that run of games, no clean sheets, same points tally as this point last season under Sam Allardyce.
Yeah.
And they were booed off the pitch most recently. So I feel like once you're getting booed off the field, it means maybe the crowd is starting to get a little bit frustrated. The fans are getting a little frustrated. And from what I've read, it seems like a lot of the pundits who cover Everton are also sort of frustrated by the stagnation.
What are they frustrated about?
Basically, I think what it comes down to, like a key thing that I read from the Royal Blue Mercy, which is the
I read that too.
Blog.
It's good, right?
Did you read the expected goals thing, which
No,
I
I
thought was
didn't.
kind of telling? Expected goals for the season is 29.67. They've scored 31. Expected goals conceded is 31.44. They've conceded 31. So it's basically saying like they're kind of doing what's expected.
Yeah.
And when they're performing the way the statistics say they should be, it points to they've got to change things up. And maybe it's Marco Silva not necessarily wanting to adjust what's working because it's not working. Because it's Marco Silva not adjusting what hasn't been working. Instead, he's kind of sticking with play it wide, press high, cross it a lot, see what happens.
Yeah, so, I might be missing something. You're saying that because they're like on target with what the expected goals say they should be scoring and conceding, that's a bad thing? Is it because those expected goals are too low and too high?
Yeah, meanwhile, they've lost 5 games.
Okay,
like 5 of their last 8. That's not great.
Okay. Can you remind me again what the expected goals were?
29.67 scored, 31 conceded.
I guess that's not so great over
not so much,
21 Premier League games. Yeah. Okay, I've given them a C+.
Okay.
And here's the interesting thing. Instead of grading them against Everton's performance last season, I think because this is Marco Silva trying to implement his style, I'm grading them against Watford's performance last season.
Yeah.
So Watford finished 14th last year. Everton are currently 11th. So to me, that suggests that Marco Silva is doing his Watford thing, his style of play, which we'll get into. You touched on it a little bit. But he is doing it at a slightly higher level with Everton. And obviously there's a lot, with any C+, there's room for improvement.
Yeah, but I think I kind of mentioned this briefly yesterday when talking about Marco Silva as like a rumored replacement for Pochettino at Spurs. And I still don't really get it. And after reading a lot more about Everton, I still don't really get it. Because, again, it's not just that they're 11th. It's not just that they've had this kind of downturn in form. It's just, it doesn't feel, in my opinion, like this is an Everton team that he's come in, changed everything, rejuvenated some of the players, and now everybody's bought in. It feels like it's kind of a lot of the similar things that we've seen elsewhere in the Premier League. It doesn't feel like this is a very unique team, at least not yet.
It does feel like they have un-Allardyced themselves.
That's true.
In a silver bath.
Yes.
Because I know Everton fans...
That's why I very quickly wanted to make it clear that I was not saying they haven't changed it from Allardyce, but from what a lot of other teams are doing.
But a lot of Everton fans were very sick of what Sam Allardyce was serving up last season. And from what I've seen of Everton, it's a lot more attractive, right? It's a lot more fun to watch. But it's just not necessarily getting all kinds of results.
Yeah. And I guess that's what it comes down to for me, is like that's great if you end up playing like more attractive soccer, but if the results don't match, then it kind of doesn't really matter.
Do you have any sympathy for the idea that they were tying the Merseyside derby, and then that weird Virgil van Dijk slice shot happened, and that weird Jordan Pickford half save happened, then Divock Origi scores, you remember all this, in the 96th minute, and ever since then they've been on a weird slide, that was the start of a rough patch. Do you have any sympathy? That includes them getting absolutely mauled by Spurs 6-2, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the start of the skid, because before that was the win against Cardiff on November 24th, then that loss, then it goes down. I mean, what do you mean, do I have sympathy?
I don't know, like, is there some sympathy for, like, they just had this heartbreaking result and then they had to face sort of Spurs and Man City and some rougher teams?
I mean, not really.
No? All right.
I know, because, I mean, if you lose a game, you lose a game. Like, you've got to respond to that. I do think there's something to be said for this Everton team has not beaten Liverpool. Like, they really struggle against Liverpool consistently, and it may have felt like this is our chance, like we're finally putting it together. Yeah. When it falls apart, then maybe it feels like everything else is kind of falling apart.
That Van Dijk shot's going way over the bar. We're good.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, sympathy would be the wrong thing, but I do think that probably factors into this more than fans would probably like.
Yeah. Can we dig into the playing style?
Sure.
So what I see is that they're trying to play some quite nice possession football with some very aggressive overlapping fullbacks and quite a high defensive line. And that it's not quite effective enough to like pile the goals on like Liverpool do, and it leaves them a little bit too open at the back because Seamus Coleman's all the way up one wing, Lucas Digne's all the way up the other wing, and you're kind of leaving the two centre backs exposed with only Idrissa Gana Gueye maybe to try and, if he can't cut it out on the counter, then Everton have a lot of holes at the back and they're very high up the field.
Yeah, and that's
right.
And that's where, like, sort of stylistically Everton don't make as much sense to me, because I would agree with everything you said, except I would add that I believe they're either top or near the top in the Premier League in terms of crossing. But with that,
I think it's those fullbacks. I think Digne and Coleman are getting forward and getting crosses in.
Okay, that's great, but I think the difference there is that if you're going to press and like be this kind of counterattacking aggressive press system, if you're then winning the ball back and then just crossing it into the box, you're always going to be out of position, because there's a decent chance that ball gets picked out of the air, and now they launch a counterattack and you've got everybody committed for it.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really make sense to me why it would be high press but then play wide and cross it into the box.
Yes.
It makes more sense to go the Liverpool-Man City route, obviously the Liverpool-Man City, so, that makes it a little bit harder, but it makes more sense to win the ball back, combine, they've got the technical ability in their midfield and their attack to not necessarily have to rely on those wide crosses as much.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially, say, Richarlison. I think when he plays sort of attacking left wing and cuts inside, he's really dangerous. When he plays centre forward, he's still dangerous, but he's not someone you want getting on the end of crosses, right? No. And then, is it Cenk Tosun?
Cenk Tosun, yeah.
Cenk Tosun, excuse me.
That's right.
And Dominic Calvert-Lewin. They're two players who I both quite like, but you also would not put them in the upper echelon of Premier League strikers, right? So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and you're aiming balls into players who are not necessarily elite in the Premier League at this point. Calvert-Lewin's a young man, so he could improve.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing with the could improve aspect. That's why I have them as a C. I get a C plus. That makes sense too. But it just feels like they've underperformed at this point, but not to the point where it's been like a disastrous season or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it does feel like the spine is there, and they have figured out at least the basics of playing that higher line. They've brought in the younger players to replace the older players, and suddenly they can do that to some extent. Tottenham ripped them apart a little bit with that high line, but for the most part, it feels like it's a thing that they've learned to deal with, and they've learned to operate accordingly.
So you mentioned the younger players coming in. I looked at who Marco Silva bought, or at least who Everton bought this summer. And it seemed to be a lot of younger guys, right? Yeah. Like, I think Richarlison's 21. I've got the list somewhere of all their players. Richarlison, Yerry Mina, who is only just coming back to full fitness, right? So I think we're yet to see the best of Yerry Mina. He's a guy we really enjoyed, centre-back Colombia during the World Cup.
How old? 23, 24?
Something like that, yeah. Lucas Dean. I'm always trying to split the difference. I think it is, but I'm always trying to split the difference. Kurt Zouma, Andrew Gomes, and Bernard are all like 21 to 25, right? Yeah. So they're not super young, but younger, as opposed to getting Wayne Rooney back.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I do think Silva has got a bunch of players. And you wouldn't say any of those players have been a disaster. They've all been relatively successful or have shown enough signs that they're going to be successful over the course of the season. So I feel like I think I'm saying the same thing as you, but in a different way. A lot of groundwork has been laid that I think this could end up being a successful Marco Silva Everton team. So that's why I'm going C+.
Yeah, and I feel like they could do not much more, finish around where they are like right now. And at the end of the season, I would maybe give them like a B instead.
Yeah.
Because it does doesn't feel like at this point they're going to be a top 6 team. It doesn't feel like they're going to be breaking into that. So I think then, like, moving towards what the rest of the season holds, for me, it's more about how do you continue to build and put yourself in a position so that this summer you can add those key components you need into the core that's already formed, and then suddenly maybe you are competing for top 6.
So when we're talking recommendations, which is what we do at the end of each team, you're saying maybe don't go out and don't make any panic signings, just keep on going with Marco Silva?
Yeah, I mean, because it doesn't feel like they're going to break top 6. It doesn't feel like they're going to get relegated.
Yeah, so they're not going to break bottom 3 either.
So yeah, exactly. So it then doesn't feel like they need to spend a bunch of money, which is what they would have to do if they did want to bring in, say, that big target striker who's going to bag a bunch of goals. As we talked about yesterday, in the January window, that's going to make it like doubly expensive, or at least more expensive than probably that player would be in the summer. When it's 6 months later, maybe fewer months on the contract, that price goes down a little bit. So I think for Everton, what I would say the biggest thing is hold on to the key players. PSG are sniffing around Idrissa Gana Gueye. I don't think they can afford to lose him.
No, I watched all the footage I saw. Anytime Idrissa Gana Gueye was missing, they looked really susceptible to just getting torn apart on the counter attack. I mean, I've seen it was like Tom Davies and Andrew Gomes. I can't remember who.
That was the Tottenham game.
That was the Tottenham game. Yeah, and they just sliced. It wasn't even counter attacks. They just sliced straight through the middle. But every time I've seen Idrissa Gana Gueye play, he doesn't necessarily do anything to create. He's like a half a Fernandinho, right? He reads the play, intercepts, gets the ball. But what he'll often do, and this goes to your earlier point, he'll play the ball wide to Digne or Coleman or one of the wingers. Yeah. But he doesn't kind of like dribble up the middle so much, right? So that's somewhat limited, but at least he's like stopping the thing coming down the middle.
And doing it very effectively. Yeah. I mean, he is that midfield like destroyer. Yeah. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to put out fires. That's what you want. That's why PSG want him. Yeah. So I think it's going to be key for Everton to hold on to him. And strangely, Everton are this weird. They're one of 2 teams, I think, in this kind of like group of teams that we're going to be discussing who are like simultaneously too thin and too bloated. Because there's a lot of players who've been bought by the previous 2 managers. Who I would say that's the other thing Everton could focus on doing is getting rid of some of the players who maybe are surplus to requirements, and then signing Andre Gomes and Kurt Zouma, whom you mentioned, to permanent deals instead of those loan contracts, because they have been key performers for them this year.
All right, are you ready to move on to the next team? Any final words on Everton?
I do have one more thing to say. The other thing that they should be doing, and I don't know, like I do kind of go into the Alexi Lalas school of thought on this one, that if you're conceding from set pieces, that's a big problem. And if you're conceding the most goals of any Premier League team from set pieces, you should definitely be concerned.
Is that what's happening?
They are indeed. 10 goals conceded from corners and free kicks. That is the most of any team in the Premier League.
Maybe it's like a weird rule that one Merseyside team has to be bad at defending set pieces. And because Liverpool are suddenly brilliant at it this year, it has to be Everton.
Yeah. So I think Everton, tighten up those set pieces, hold on to your key players, sign some people to permanent deals, sell a few here and there for like 5 to 10 million. And it feels like you've got the money and the confidence in the squad that if you've got this kind of core, you see it through the season, you go out and buy a few more players, suddenly you look all the stronger for next season.
And don't lose faith in Marco Silva, right? Yes. I'd say that to Everton fans and to the Everton board.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, you know what? C+, why not?
Oh, wow.
just to make everybody happy. Yes, I'm sure that's what's holding people back.
Let's move on to Fulham.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fulham are currently 19th in the Premier League. They switch managers halfway through. That's the brief capsule narrative. What's your grade for Fulham right now?
I'll get them as a D, maybe a D minus, I think.
Why so?
Where are you? Have you got them as an F?
E.
E? Yes. Okay, wait, below D but not yet F?
Yeah, basically E. Right? Is E not a grade?
No.
Oh, does grading go A, B, C, D, and like F is fail?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that.
I was very confused. I was like, E for excellent? Yeah.
D minus then?
Okay, yeah. So we're about the same.
If anyone knows, we are not actual teachers.
Yeah, we are not. Fulham 19th, only having 14 points so far, which makes them, I think, 4 off safety, but because their goal difference is so horrific, they really are 5 points off safety, is how I put that.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Have they conceded the most goals in the Premier League?
They sure have, by a wide margin.
What's the total number? I feel like you've done more stat research than me. So
47 goals conceded.
In 21 games?
Yes, that's and they are among the fewest in goals scored, only 19 goals for Fulham this season.
Okay, here's the reason I felt compelled to give them a non-existent grade, which I've now changed to D minus. I was willing to go like C or higher because I thought getting rid of Slaviša Jokanovic was the right move. I thought he got the team promoted, the Serbian coach, but then played this weird 3-4-3 that was way too open. Right? He had wing backs that did more wing than back. Yeah. Right? And there was way too much space. And they were just absolutely getting exploited all the time. It was the correct decision to fire him. But things haven't really been fixed under Claudio Ranieri, right? He won that first game against Southampton, but I watched a lot of footage of recent Ranieri games. They're a bit more conservative, but they're mostly still just getting murdered in defence, right?
Yeah,
so I don't think the problems have been fixed.
Which, if I were a Fulham fan, and I guess I am to some extent because of that, the Full America history, I would be worried because Claudio Ranieri, when he took over Chelsea way back when, took them on like an 11-point run. I think they ended up finishing 6th, but that was a very poor season for them. When he took over Leicester, I think they won 4 out of their first 5, and that other one was a draw. Yeah. So they really did hit the ground running, those two teams. This time around, I think they won his first game and then have not won since, or thereabouts.
Not so good, right?
Not so good, no.
So what do you see as the problems?
I think the thing that I find so confusing about this Fulham team, to go back to your initial point with Jokanovic, is that it felt almost like when Mourinho was fired by Manchester United and like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was brought in, like just let him have fun. It feels like he kind of thought that's what would be enough with this Fulham team and the amount of money they spent. That like we can just send him out there in a 3-4-3 and everybody's going to be on their heels because we're going to be so attacking. And so with that, then you have the change because that didn't work at all, and everybody's all spread out. And I say all that just to say that like I sort of don't know. I really don't know what I would say is the problem with Fulham in the sense that like that backline still looks like chaos. They still don't seem like they've landed on a formation they want to play. They still haven't decided what to do out wide in terms of sending those fullbacks forward. Yeah. Mitrovic is now in a bit of a slump. I think only 1 goal in his last 8 games. So it just feels like there are issues all over the field. Sarri hasn't really impressed. Sessegnon, I think, missed 2 open goals in the FA Cup. It just kind of feels like the whole team is in a skid, and I don't really know how you fix it. So
I think before we get to what needs fixing, I have a specific idea for what the problem is, even though I'm not quite sure how to fix it. I think the reason they might even deserve an F is the amount of money that was spent this summer and the amount of it's not their fault, but the optimism it created, right? Because Fulham essentially was supposed to do a Wolves, right, which is to be comfortably mid-table because you reinforced well in the summer and had a really defined and effective style of play, right? And you look at all the signings this summer, like you said, Sarri has not been terrible, but he hasn't been as consistent as everyone expected, right? Andre Schürrle has shown these moments of quality, but mostly every time I see him, he just looks like someone who wants to shoot from anywhere and ends up giving up possession quite a lot. The big one for me is Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa, who was signed, I think he was about £30 million from Marseille. And I had a good look at his highlights because I was really interested in what had gone wrong for him. He looks excellent in terms of winning the ball back, getting a foot in, like reading the play and intercepting, wonderful defensive stuff. And then when he has the ball, he looks like he's in a blind panic.
So what do you think that is? Is it just like
I have no idea, except maybe they didn't scout him correctly and like maybe thought he was better on the ball than he was. Or like maybe the Premier League moves faster than it does in League One when you play for a not good team, to a degree where like he's just not used to being under so much pressure. I mean, obviously a talented player, but that's a lot of money spent on a player that isn't ready to go in the Premier League.
So sorry for jumping in, but I feel like that's a very good exemplifier of what I'm talking about when I say that I don't fully know what I would start with if I were Fulham, because it could be that maybe maybe that, but it could be that he's overwhelmed. Anguissa, was it?
Yeah.
It could be that he's just overwhelmed by the pace and the physicality of the Premier League, but it could also be the case that he's used to being able to look to his left and he knows, there's a pass open 5 yards away. And now he looks to his left and it's a pass not open 20 yards away. And it might just be that like the rhythm, like the patterns of play and the rhythm isn't there yet. Yeah. And I also think that's why some of the purchases they made were, in hindsight, not very smart, because it doesn't feel like there's enough experience there and veteran Premier League experience at that to sort of right the ship, steady things, get them playing basic, and then you can progress.
Here's a big thing with Anguissa. I read in a sort of, I think it was a London paper, a journalist had interviewed him, and he essentially said, when I was at Marseille, I was part of a midfield 3 and I had a lot more guys around me. At Fulham, it's been this weird 3-4-3 thing. So I think everything's just more chaotic in central midfield, right? You're part of a 2 or you're part of a 3. It's very, very different, I think. So I think part of that has been they maybe just assumed that he could do the same thing in a different shape, in a different league for a different team, and he couldn't. The other big signing was Alfie Mawson, who I think has been injured for the start of the season and then not brilliant since he's come back, which leads me to what I think is the worst thing. When I look at this Fulham team, right, no matter what style they play, whether it's 3 at the back, 4 at the back, or whatever, if you look at the names of the defenders, I think they're basically just not good enough.
Okay. Like, just from name standpoint?
Name
Tim Ream, it just doesn't sound good enough?
Tim Ream is not necessarily part of a defence that's going to be stable and successful in the Premier League, right? Dennis Odoi is not necessarily part of a team that's going to be stable and successful in the Premier League. And you look at just in terms of performances, no one has stood out in terms of like... they've had a rough season, but this defender has been making a lot of blocks or a lot of interceptions, or this defender has sort of been the one that's calmed some things down. There hasn't been any standout defensive performances. And I think it's basically the quality of defender is not quite high enough.
Man, you're right. It really does feel like a swirling perfect storm almost of like you've got players who've been with Fulham for a long time, and then some like younger players who were there for like the past season or two, but maybe don't have that, as a result, don't have that Premier League pedigree. So then you bring in a player like Alfie Mawson, who is designed to like, he's played a few seasons. He's been in relegation scraps.
He got relegated to Swansea, right? But he was part of a team that defensively wasn't good enough to stay in the Premier League.
True, but it's also the case that then you're bringing in a new player. So it's only been 6 months at this point, and because of the managerial change, because they've tried different things, because it's been an injured back line and a stretched back line, again, you don't have the kind of consistency. And so it's like an inconsistent team with a lot of young players who maybe aren't good enough for the Premier League, and the ones who are good enough for the Premier League are trying to bet in really quickly, but then being asked to do different things at the same time. It just feels like it's a club that is completely unstable.
And they started out with tactics.
I remember it was instability or instability, so I went with unstable.
I think they're both. It started out with tactics that were just guaranteed to fail, right? Just playing open in the Premier League, which I think is a holdover from having all the ball in the Championship. Like, Fulham looked like the best team in the Championship for a long stretch, better than Wolves for a long, long stretch. You just can't expect to be ball dominant in the Premier League when you're Fulham. No, because you're playing Liverpool and Manchester City and Chelsea and other much, much bigger teams with players who are capable of holding on to the ball.
True, but this is also a Fulham team who came through the playoffs. Like it's not as though they dominated and really should have backed themselves to like, we won the league by 20 points.
Yeah.
When you win the playoff, that's great. You still won it, but it also means that there were periods when it looked like they were going to be the best team, and then they slipped and kind of had some setbacks.
It was more. My memory is they had a rough start to the season. Then round about January, they got Mitrovic on loan, and then they went on this endless unbeaten streak, and that's why they finished I think third or fourth, to make sure that they made the playoffs. So for a good stretch, they really were the best team in the Championship. But for a stretch at the front, they were very much not.
All right, but let's go with the best team in the Championship to start. Let's give Fulham fans, do you have reasons for optimism or things that you think they could do to improve the situation?
I mean, I think there's some legitimately really good players. I think Alexander Mitrovic is an excellent striker. Like, for a lot of the teams that we'll talk about who are down the bottom end of the table, I think he's the exact type of player they would need. He's a guy who will sort of fight all day for you. He's genuinely dependable in front of goal. He's an aerial threat, and he's also got a little bit of creativity. Have you seen the goal for Kamara when Mitrovic sort of does a backheel Zlatan-ish volley? He's really got something about him. And I think the only solution is to just shore up that defense in some way.
I would agree with that. What I was like contemplating just then, I think you're right. D- is accurate because
I still say E, the non-existent grade.
It's close to F. It really is close to F. Because even though the team that is lower than them in the table, who we're about to talk about, like I still gave Huddersfield a better grade because they don't have nearly the budget that Fulham do. And in talking about it, you're absolutely right that the players they have and the money they've spent, they should not be anywhere close to this position. That might be a D-.
Here's my one weird question for them going forward. All right, they brought in Claudio Ranieri only in late November, right? Why has Claudio Ranieri not played his Leicester City style 4-4-2?
It's a great question.
Which is where you have two banks of four, and you don't sit deep. You have like a mid-block, but then when you win the ball back, you just sort of go, right? I know maybe it was very Jamie Vardy dependent because it was all about like hitting Vardy early and getting him in behind, and maybe Ranieri doesn't think that's possible.
I mean, I
haven't seen him try. I've seen him do essentially the Jukanovic thing, but just a little bit more conservative. And you've conceded probably slightly fewer goals, but not enough fewer goals.
But that's fair. But I also think that Leicester team, I mean, look at the spine of that Leicester team, starting with Kasper Schmeichel. Like, Kasper Schmeichel starts for Fulham 100%. Like, that's an amazing goalkeeper. It was Wes Morgan, probably in the form of his career, and their other center back was...
probably Robert Huth.
That would be the one. Again, form of their lives. Then you've got N'Golo Kante in front of them. You've got Jamie Vardy playing lights out. You've got Riyad Mahrez, like, linking the attack and being that threat on the counter.
Some very big Marc Albright Spartan disrespect going on here.
I mean, yes, fair. I don't know if he has the type of players that he wants to be able to play that system. I don't know who plays the N'Golo Kante role. I don't know if he trusts Mitrovic to be as mobile and physical certainly, but as mobile as Jamie Vardy. And so that leaves you with question marks, and I think he can't afford to fully switch. I think a point you made in a previous show that would help him is if they went out and got Danny Drinkwater.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, but then you just add into the pile of what I realised. The problem is they have so many midfielders that just going and getting another one, it might solve it, but you've still got the problem where you've got like this very expensive Anguissa, and you've got Seri, and you've also got McDonald's already there, and Tom Ken is there, and there's a lot of midfielders already stacked up. So I don't know how much the Fulham board wants to gamble in terms of you'd essentially be throwing good money after bad because of what happened this summer. That's the gamble, right?
But there is that point where you have to do that because otherwise you're going to get relegated, and I doubt they're going to be able to deal with this wage structure in the Championship. So I think they're a team who I think go out, get some like veteran Premier League players. Danny Drinkwater, again, I think he's got the experience to come in and right that midfield, at least to some extent.
He's definitely well rested.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I think that is the biggest thing for me, and if it means you loan out some of the flair players and give them experience doing their flair thing where it's not going to hurt you and not get you relegated, then you bring them back in for a full preseason under Claudio Ranieri when things are a little bit more stable. That makes sense to me. I would also add, before we move on, that it is a time where if Fulham can right some things and put a few things together, their next run of games are at Burnley, home to Tottenham, home to Brighton, away to Crystal Palace. I feel like 4 points from those 4 games and things are looking slightly better. And so it does feel like their next run of games, Tottenham aside, feel like they should be in competition, and suddenly they could easily be out of or close to out of the relegation zone.
Before we do move on, I do have transfer recommendations for Fulham based on my idea of you do not have good centre backs. You need to go get some centre backs. I think if Gary Cahill's looking for somewhere to go, they should throw all kinds of money in terms of wages at Gary Cahill. He would be absolutely perfect as an upgrade for that Fulham backline.
I agree, but it's dependent on them changing what they're doing. Because if they continue to play a high line or push their line up...
It's not really a high line, it's just that there's only 3 of them, so there are gaps to be exploited behind the wingers.
Yeah, and do you think Gary Cahill deals with that?
More so than the people that are there now.
I genuinely am not sure I agree with you.
All right.
I really don't. Because,
okay, I got another one for you then. So did you want to explain more?
Go ahead.
Beg Chris Smalling to come back to the club where he started. Persuade him that, hey, I don't think Ole Gunnar loves you all that much. You want to play for 6 months? You could be the one that saves us. Come back and be a centre-back hero for Fulham Football Club.
United do have Tottenham coming up, and I was watching the recent game where Chris Smalling gets destroyed by Tottenham. So, yeah, I'd be fine with that from a Man United perspective. If they went out and signed a centre-back Manchester United, then it does feel like maybe that would be a player that Fulham could come inquiring about.
So I think something like that. But I know this feels very obvious, but an experienced veteran Premier League centre-back with a good track record, send him to Fulham.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Chris Smalling. Pack up your bags.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not happy about this suggestion. But.
They have said, according to Sky Sports, that it's been confirmed that Fulham are looking for a center back, a striker, and a right back. So they're looking for...
striker?
Yeah, I think they want to spell Alexander Mitrovic, or at least I think Ranieri wants the option of going 4-4-2 and maybe doesn't back the personnel he has now
that makes sense.
To have an Okazaki, basically, which, it's worth noting, is out of sorts at Leicester. We'll talk about him in a minute.
And also, Vardy's not thrilled about the playing style at Leicester, so maybe you could persuade Vardy. No, you couldn't persuade Vardy to go and play for the 19th team in the Premier League.
No. Pay him enough money.
Okay, are you ready for an ad read before we get to
the
rest of the Premier League? Today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek. I don't have the app in front of me, but I know Taylor has been looking at it.
I sure have.
SeatGeek makes it very easy to buy tickets to all kinds of live events, be they sporting, be they dance, theatre. I've never mentioned dance before.
Yeah.
Comedy, music, anything you like. SeatGeek is the place to get your tickets.
It is indeed. We're talking about the Premier League right now. We'll soon be talking about the men's and women's national teams. We've got the Women's World Cup coming up, and the kind of run up to that with the friendlies. Then you've got the first national team games for Greg Berhalter and the U.S. men's national team.
They were training today. Did you see some training videos?
I did not.
Released?
I was busy researching these teams we're talking about.
Okay.
But you've got USMNT versus Costa Rica at Avaya Stadium on February 2nd. Tickets available there starting at around $44. $24.
Okay.
For the U.S. women, you've got a string of games: Australia, Belgium, Mexico. Those range between $50 and $80. $80 would be the Australia game, I think, because it's mostly sold out at this point.
Yes. Okay. So it'd be good to get a look at the US Women's National Team before the World Cup gets going.
It would. But speaking of sold out, it's worth noting that is one of the main advantages of SeatGeek. Is, for example, the Dropkick Murphys, a band I enjoy, coming to Richmond, sold out via the official ticket site and the official website, but tickets available on SeatGeek.
Yes. So SeatGeek is an aggregator for all ticket markets. So yeah, if you are looking for an event that's sold out, you're desperate to get tickets, I really would recommend SeatGeek as the place to go, especially because of the traffic light style green, orange, red system. They will let you know which are good tickets at a good price and which are not. So that essentially help you navigate the system. On top of that, every ticket bought through SeatGeek is guaranteed.
Yep.
Right. So
fully
you
guaranteed.
know that even though you're buying it from someone who's already bought their ticket, you're not going to get ripped off. You're going to get an actual ticket that gets you into the actual event.
Yeah, there's really nothing worse than like the competition for that would be the site that's like, oh, these are totally legit tickets, like totallylegittickets.com. I'm like, I don't think I believe you. SeatGeek I trust. And the best of all about SeatGeek is that our listeners can get $10 off their first SeatGeek purchase.
Here's how you do that.
Oh, you going to do it?
Oh, no, please tell our listeners how to do it.
Jumping in during my ad read.
Excuse me.
Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code TSS today. Daryl, one more time that was?
That's promo code TSS.
Okay, thank you.
Get that
How do you spell
that? TSS.
Okay, cool.
For $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. We have heard from lots of listeners that have used this deal and gotten their $10 off.
We sure have. Thank you to SeatGeek. Remember, SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets. They may have the tickets to Huddersfield. I'm not sure if I want to buy those tickets, Daryl Grove. Up next, we've got Huddersfield.
Patrick Stewart's selling his.
Yeah, he may well be. What grade have you given the Huddersfield Terriers?
Huddersfield Town, I've given a D for down because that's where they're going.
I've gone D+. I've gone D+, slightly higher than Fulham because even though they're lower in the table, they are probably going down, but they've got a lot less to work with.
16th last year, 20th right now.
Not great.
Bottom of the Premier League. I would even say, though, the 16th from last season includes a strong start and then a huge slip, right? They won only one of their last 10 games.
Yep.
Then they had an 8-match winner streak in the middle of the season, and they've never stopped slipping. That's what happened last season. Then this season, no wins in their first 10 games, a win, a draw, and a win in the middle, and then no wins in their last 8.
9, including the FA Cup.
I'm going Premier League only.
Okay,
here.
gotcha.
So this is like really bad form from Huddersfield that is a carryover from the end of last season.
Agreed.
It's a very long-winded way of saying that.
No, I'm with you because I also want to point out in that most recent stretch of 9 or 8 Premier League winless games, those losses have been to Burnley, Fulham, Southampton, Newcastle, Bournemouth, and Brighton. Like those are not the teams that it's not as though I just listed the top half of the table and it's like, oh, that makes sense. And if anything, they are about to play the top half of the table, and I feel like it's only going to get worse for Huddersfield.
Oh dear. Okay, so I guess the big question is why?
Sure.
Right? What is going wrong at Huddersfield?
I've got some thoughts.
Yeah, please.
Do you want to hear my thoughts, or I know you've got expert thoughts? Which would you prefer?
Let's hear your thoughts first.
Sure.
Your thoughts first, and
All
then
right.
the expert thoughts.
I'm going to explain it as this. This may be slightly long-winded, so buckle up. But I'm going to say, similar to what we said about Brighton yesterday, where Brighton are basically sticking with what works until it doesn't.
Yeah.
I feel like Huddersfield are sticking with what brought them here, but now it's not working. And you're right. You're absolutely right that it didn't necessarily
They're
work.
dancing to a song that's finished.
Yeah, kind of. Because if you look at last season, for example, one of the biggest issues that David Wagner identified, they failed to score in 21 of 38 games. A lot of that, he said, was because of a lack of production from the wings. So they bring in, they sell Tom Ince. They're not pleased with his level of production. They bring in Ramadan Sobhi from Stoke and Adama Diakabi from Monaco. They're supposed to solve all the problems. Ramadan Sobhi does not play for Huddersfield anymore, loaned out to Al Ali. I think Diakabi has played like 7 games, no assists, hasn't contributed anything. In fact, I think they only have like 6 players with assists, only one of whom has multiple assists. So they have not solved the production problems, and then that's left them essentially isolated up top. It's similar to like the Josie Altidore, Hull, or Sunderland situation, where it's just him, a big striker standing up top by themselves, really having no service and no help.
Well, yeah, and I'd say the same for Steve Mounier, who is their like most regular starting centre forward, right? It's very much a Josie Altidore situation where partly it's just he's not getting enough good service, but partly then he's just not good enough to make the most of very little service. Right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the whole Josie thing when he was at Hull or Sunderland? We were always like, it's not all his fault, but also if that was Didier Drogba or if that was Shevchenko or if that was like a high-level striker, they'd be making the most of the few chances they got. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like unfair, but also they're not helping.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I would say it's even worse here. Like, I genuinely don't know if Didier Drogba's Didier Drogba. A Shevchenko, I don't know if he makes this situation much better because it is so dire when it comes to goals created. I believe they have the fewest of any team in the Premier League right now in terms of goals scored. But as I said, it is only 7 players have an actual assist. Steve Mounier is top with 3. Everybody else has 1. So it shows you again that you don't have much connection in this team and you don't have many opportunities. And so I say, like, Shevchenko might not help them just because even if you played it into the feet of Shevchenko, if you don't have people around him to help him or making runs off the ball or feeding him good balls in from the wing, I don't know what difference that makes.
So here's the interesting thing then. Like, it's easy for us to sit here and say their strikers are no good, their strikers haven't scored any goals, that's what the problem is, right? But I think there's a bigger picture thing where Huddersfield are actually doing a lot of things right. Like, I watched them when they beat Wolves was maybe the best example. They still pressed, right, in a way that, like, Wolves like to have possession through Neves and Moutinho and move the ball around. Huddersfield made it almost impossible with Aaron Moy and I can't remember if it's Philip or Peter. I'm going to say Philip Billing. Really aggressive in midfield, win the ball back. Hogg is underneath them. Like, great name for a defensive midfielder because he will come and hog the ball and he'll take it off you. Like, really good pressing team, right? And then also, according to Pav, who's our expert, he's our Huddersfield fan that we know, been on the show. When they're in possession, they hold on to the ball for quite a long time and move the ball around. And yet, in the end, it always comes to nothing, right? So these aren't strikers that are just completely starved of service. So maybe the Josie Altidore thing was the wrong comparison. It's just that when the ball gets into the final third, everything fizzles. Everything disappears.
Well, I was going to ask you that. When he says, like, it comes to nothing, because that could be a number of different things. That could be, like, the crosses are mishit. That could be the shots go wide. But it couldn't also be that, like, literally it comes to nothing as then they possess the ball for 5 minutes straight, but then they just end up coughing it up because they don't go anywhere with it.
Pav's specific complaint was they've got wing backs and they've only got one striker. It's just Mounier on his own. And so there's just not enough connection between Mounier and anybody else.
Yeah. So then it kind of goes back. It's a hybrid then of the Josie Altidore situation where it's basically like a lack of service, but then also when there is service, a lack of production.
Yeah, and when the service does come, it's just to Mounier and he's somewhat outnumbered, right? And it's almost like maybe David Wagner has said, I'm going to get numbers in central midfield with this 5-3-1-1, and you've got lots of numbers in central midfield. That's probably why they can control possession. It's probably why their pressing game is still effective in terms of winning the ball back. But then it's like half of Liverpool, right? Like Liverpool win the ball back and then they go, and everybody goes ahead of the ball and there's 3 attackers moving around. But imagine that. But when you win the ball back, you try to go forward, and instead of 3 high quality attackers moving around, it's just Steve Mounier sort of running in channels on his own, hoping for something good.
Yeah, and then in terms of like hoping for something good, you can rely on the defense somewhat if you're a Huddersfield fan, because conceded 37, which is a lot of goals for 21 games. But it's like, I think there are 5 teams that have conceded more. So if Huddersfield were doing what they're doing and then maybe getting a little bit more service and a few more goals, I do think they would be right back in the situation that they were in last season, which is still near the relegation zone, but not nailed to the bottom of the table.
The interesting thing I keep hearing is David Wagner keeps saying, we're playing well, we look good in practice, it's just that the results aren't coming. And I think that excuse can only hold for so long. And I would say it's gone on far, far, far too long. I think, again, he's like dancing to a song that finished a long time ago. It probably finished towards the end of last season.
Well, this is the confusing thing, though, that, like, because I would agree with that, but I don't know if this is because he's, like, American-ish or because I like what he's done with them to get them to this point. It doesn't feel like they should let go of him, but that's a strange thing to say about a team that, again, is very much the bottom of the table.
I get the feeling that if they went down with David Wagner, they'd be a very good team in the Championship and would very likely come back up. I don't think there's a coach that could save them in the Premier League.
I would agree with that, yeah. And I would also say that I think if you part ways with David Wagner, there are plenty of teams higher up the table who might take a look at him.
Yeah,
he does feel like one of those coaches in the I shouldn't say Roberto Martinez like sense, because, it didn't work out for him necessarily at Everton. Yeah. But he does feel like that coach who, even if Huddersfield were to go down, he maybe ends up getting a job in the Premier League next season.
Get the Belgium job.
Yeah, why not? Sure.
The other thing that's maybe worth talking about with Huddersfield is the strong start to 2017-18 was that everyone was surprised that a promoted team was a pressing team.
Yeah.
And I really think like the early success where they picked up a lot of points, and that's ultimately the points that saved them last season, was due to the whoa, what's this Yorkshire team doing pressing us and be causing all kinds of trouble for us. And as soon as everyone knows that that's coming or figures that out, the surprise is gone. And also pressing is just not that rare. Even
I was going to say, when 2/3 of the teams in the Premier League are pressing, it's sort of okay, pressing defense activated, and now we've nullified that threat.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, everyone's adapted kind of, and especially adapted to essentially a team with lower quality players, with all due respect to everybody, coming and doing it to you. It's not the same as when Liverpool, Man City, Spurs do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely not. So with that said, looking forward, I believe their owner did say that they would splash in the transfer market, but splash is the wrong term. They would potentially spend, provided it didn't mean financial ruin for the club.
So dabble as opposed to splash.
Yes, and I think what they have done so far is a good indicator of the type of player they're going to be pursuing.
Is it Jason Puncheon on loan?
It is Jason Puncheon on loan.
I'm not sure he's any better than the guys that are there now. I will say, this is a weird thing where I don't have a strong take on any of the attackers, outside of maybe Steve Mounier, because he's the one I've ended up watching the most. But guys like Elias Kachunga, Isaac Mbenza, Colin Kwana, just haven't seen much from them. And weirdly, I think that's the problem. There's almost not much to analyse because they don't do much. I mean, they don't produce much.
Unless it's changed in the last game or two, I believe I'm correct in saying that not one of their strikers has scored a goal this season.
Steve Mounier has one header.
Is he listed as a striker? That's my question.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so then he may be the only one. Outside of that, no other striker has scored a goal. Again, very telling of the quality.
I'll tell you this. I think it was against Burnley, and again they ultimately lost. When he scored, the commentator said, finally one of Huddersfield's strikers has scored.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So it's sort of keeping that negative trend alive a little bit.
So I guess my recommendation would be, don't just add to the pile of mediocre strikers, with all due respect to Jason Puncheon.
I think they're going to use him wide, is the indication I got. That he'll be a winger who maybe will provide better service.
Okay, well, don't just add to the pile of mediocre attacking players.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
They really needed to sort of maybe have a bit of a clear out and just get any money that you can for some of these players that aren't producing.
Oh, so you're saying just embrace that you're probably getting relegated?
Yeah, no, I'm saying fold your cards on those strikers, get whatever money you can, and then spend big on a couple of the very best players you could get.
I see.
Yeah,
but
that's not a very realistic scenario because there's not really a buying market for strikers and wingers that aren't producing assists or goals, right?
No, and I doubt this is within their.
It's like trying to sell your house during a recession.
It is. I doubt this is within their wage structure or what they could afford from a fee standpoint. But Daniel Sturridge I think his contract is done at the end of this season. That might be a player who I would go looking at if I were Huddersfield.
He would be great for Huddersfield right now. The problem is I think he wants to probably stick around and play his small but important role in Liverpool's title challenge.
That is probably a decent shout. Yeah, so then it's going to be tough to pry people away. Even tougher, as I alluded to earlier, next 5 games at Cardiff, then home to Manchester City, home to Everton, away to Chelsea, home to Arsenal. It doesn't feel like they're going to be getting off the bottom of the table anytime soon. You never know. Maybe they go on a run. Maybe they surprise some people.
Oh, just because I went back and forth with Pav about Huddersfield, I want to highlight the one good thing that's happening at Huddersfield. He really likes Eric Durm, the former Dortmund wing-back.
You mispronounced Danny Williams, but that's fine.
Danny Williams still coming back from injury, for anyone who's wondering. Also, Aaron Moy is out until February, so that is a terrible bit of news for their next few games.
It's about the worst combination they could get.
Yeah. But Eric Durm, the former Dortmund fullback, has been really useful getting up and down. And I've seen him as well getting sort of down and getting some crosses in. But again, Steve Mounier is not scoring most of those crosses.
No, he's not. So it does feel like maybe Cardiff are going to be, or not Cardiff, excuse me. I would still maybe put Cardiff in there, but it feels like Huddersfield, Cardiff are likely contenders for the bottom 3.
Yes, and one final reason for my bad grade, I'm starting to think that even though David Wagner is very likeable and plays a really interesting, nice style of Klopp-ish football, there's a chance that he's very bad in the transfer market. Because if Eric Durm is the only successful signing, and that's a player he's already sort of worked with or been around at Dortmund, and then you list all the attackers all the attackers we listed earlier that have produced almost nothing. I think one of the problems at Huddersfield might be that they're signing the wrong players.
I would agree, except that this summer they brought in a new sporting director, I believe with one of the mandates being to like operate and regulate the transfer market. And so a lot of the signings from this summer, I forget the gentleman's name, but are the new sporting directors are under his purview. So I think, if anything, maybe David Wagner hasn't done great, but nor has their new sporting director who brought in, as I said, a player who's already out on loan.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah, not great.
Should we move on to the next team?
Sure.
All right. Next up is Leicester City, 2015-16 Premier League champions. They are currently
a long time ago.
It does feel a long time ago, right? They are currently 7th in the Premier League, which surprised me. Every time I look at the table, I'm like, really? Okay. What's your grade for Leicester City?
I'm saying B+, all things considered.
I've got B+ also.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you explain your B+?
Sure. I mean, as you said, it's weird. They're seventh right now, and yet it feels like the fans are close to like openly rioting every time Claude Puel does anything. But it's worth remembering away from the field, this is a team whose owner, Vichai Srivadhanaprabha, I think I got that one. He passed away along with 4 other people in the helicopter crash after leaving the game.
Yeah.
And so when you've lost your owner, who was by all accounts like this very important figure within the locker room and within the club as a whole, that is always going to make things very difficult because then you've got turmoil and you don't quite know who's doing what and what the situation is going to be going forward. So that they have kind of dealt with that. It feels like Claude Puel has sort of started to get people a little bit more on board, although it seems like there's still quite a bit of resistance. And the fact that they are 7th, with all that said, and that doesn't even mention losing Riyad Mahrez at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
So it just feels like they deserve more credit, and I think specifically Claude Puel deserves more credit than he's getting.
Did you read much about why he doesn't get so much credit?
I've heard varying things. So what have you read?
So I've read that essentially 2 reasons that no one likes Claude Puel, even though he's got Leicester to 7th in the Premier League. And it's because essentially at home he plays a very possession-heavy style of football in what, from what I've seen, I would term it an almost Louis van Gaal type way, as in just it's very cautious possession. Like the premium is on keeping the ball, the premium is not on attacking. Yeah. And it's kind of effective, but apparently it's sort of torturous to watch because it's so slow and doesn't really go anywhere, and a lot of passes go backwards.
Yes.
So I think Leicester fans, especially Leicester fans who won the Premier League with that sort of bang, bang, quick ball in ahead of Jamie Vardy, let's go, everybody cheer system. Apparently it's quite painful to watch the ball be moved slowly around the field.
Yes, I would agree with that. The other one that I thought was interesting from what I've heard is just that like he's not that compelling. That he's you go back to Claudio Ranieri when they won the title, and Claudio Ranieri is this avuncular Italian grandfather. Like that he's very charming. You look around the league and there's all these like big personalities and big motivators and heavy metal football and all that stuff. And Claude Puel, by all accounts, is like fairly soft spoken. He's not particularly emotional. He's not particularly energetic. He's not going to give you crazy, interesting comments in a press conference. And so it's just sort of the norm, I guess.
Or training sessions. Apparently his training sessions are a little bit dull and samey, and so players are not thrilled about that.
Yeah, and I get that, and I get how that could be frustrating. It still feels like this is a team that could very much be competing like further up the table if people buy in, because he seems, in my opinion, like he's figured some stuff out with this Leicester team.
What do you think?
Well, so like I look at like his what appears to be his, at least more recently, that preferred midfield of Ndidi, Mendy, and Chowdhury, who's not a player that I was very familiar with at all heading into this season. But that seems to be this core in this 4-3-3 that is now playing very well for him, and they're starting to get the results that they need, and it just feels like it's starting to click, but there's still this fan reaction. And then the front line, as I said, you lose Riyad Mahrez, but you've got James Maddison, Jamie Vardy, Mark Albrighton, again, continuing to produce.
So I am, speaking of James Maddison especially, I'm kind of a huge fan of this Leicester team, not because they're beautiful to watch, because people are right, it is slow. But you've got Ben Chilwell, young English left-back, who's like really got this attacking thrust to him, does these really nice like interior diagonal dribbles where he'll just drive at opposition defences from left-back. You've got Harry Maguire as one of the centre-backs. Obviously, Jamie Vardy is often quite fun to watch up front. And you've got James Maddison, who's this like super creative, nice to watch.
So you're talking like England standpoint.
English attacking midfielder. Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of really good young plus Jamie Vardy English talent starting regularly on this Leicester team. And for me, it's quite a pleasure to watch that happen, even if they move the ball slowly. And the weird thing is, when they go away from home, they do counter-attack. They beat Manchester City by playing a sort of more Ranieri-style counter-attacking thing. And I think it's just that Claude Puel just picks the tactics to get the best result and doesn't care what anyone else thinks. That might ultimately be his downfall, though, because he was fired from Southampton after finishing 8th.
Yep. Yeah, and so I think you're totally
really
right.
Similar circumstances.
That, you can reach that point as a manager or as a club where if you're always finishing 11th, eventually, I think this is like the Mark Hughes Stoke situation. Is like eventually you're going to want to change things up, or Tony Pulis at Stoke, because it's always Stoke, because it just feels like, okay, we've kind of achieved what we can achieve, but now we got to find somebody to take us to that next level. Yeah. Leicester having already been to that next level, probably even less patient with Claude Puel this time around.
Yeah, maybe it's because they've sort of tasted paradise, or they've glimpsed paradise and they want to get back there.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm with you, and then I'm with you because like if you go back and look, a lot of the losses under Puel have been when he's trying to play a 4-2-3-1, and it seems like he's kind of abandoned that 4-2-3-1. I think they're all 3 of their most recent losses, if you look at their starting shape, is a 4-2-3-1, and their most recent wins is that shift to the 4-3-3. And so, again, it feels like a core of good English players, exciting other players that you can keep an eye on. You've got a great goalkeeper. It seems like results are changing. It seems like they're in a position where if everybody continues to perform, they can strengthen a little bit in the summer. They'll have money to spend, and then they can be even stronger next year.
Have you seen the transfer stuff that's possibly happening in January or the summer?
The thinning out?
Yes. Yeah. So Puel has talked about Vicente Iborra is on his way to Villarreal.
Already done.
And he's also said Adrian Silva and Andy King can both leave as well. Because I think, like you said, the midfield 3 that you named, he's kind of got that down. And I think he's got a couple backups to that as well. And I think this is, again, it's not a popular thing maybe to get rid of those players, especially Andy King.
Shinji Okazaki as well. That's another one that I don't think has gone down well. Both his lack of minutes, I think 169 minutes total this season in 13 appearances, so that tells you how many minutes he's getting.
But I think it's a horrible paradox where for a team like Leicester, you need to be somewhat pragmatic and practical. Yeah. But when you're pragmatic and practical, that means some unpopular decisions. And then if you don't have any charisma, that makes you a very unpopular man.
Yeah.
So...
Yes, and I would agree with that completely, and I think that is the difference between Leicester and Everton, for example. I would say Leicester should do the same thing that I recommended Everton do, which is, thin that squad out, sell the players for what you can. You're probably not going to get a profit. As you said, Iborra, I think they lost $6 million on him, having signed him in the summer of 2017. So it's not like they did that well with that investment, but I think you sell some players, you've got the Mahrez money, you wait till the summer, you reinvest, and I think that makes you stronger. I think the difference is that they don't have that manager that they were pursuing for over a year the way Everton did. They have the manager that they think is the one that's going to take them to that next level, and it feels like even though Leicester are above Everton in the table and have that same core that's very exciting and very good, it's because of Claude Puel. It just feels like they're not quite at that level, even though they're 4 places ahead.
So my recommendation is stick with Claude Puel. Maybe don't worry about the fans getting a bit bored, maybe. I mean, Leicester fans might hate me for saying this because they want to see some exciting football. But I would say stick with it. Don't have any big upheaval. And if anything, maybe just ask Claude to do some charisma training or do some more socializing, take some improv classes, just to, learn to be more likable.
I mean, the last time we recommended someone take improv lessons, they tweeted at us. I doubt that's going to happen this time, but we'll see what happens. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. I think we're getting close to moving on.
Yeah.
You already mentioned Ben Chilwell, who's 22 years old. They brought in Ricardo Pereira. He has become that the starter on the other side. So they've got those 2 fullbacks. Pereira, I think, is 25. So it does feel like they've got the fullbacks, and both are producing. Pereira's got 2 goals. They both chipped in with some assists. It feels like they've got the fullbacks for the next 5 years or so. They've got Harry Maguire. They've got Kasper Schmeichel. They've got the solid midfield. It just feels like they've got those pieces.
All right, So Leicester, we're oddly optimistic about them, even if the fans aren't happy with Claude Puel.
I'm realizing I've spent a lot of this relisting the players Leicester have because I just don't get why there's this feeling of it's just not working. Things are really bad at Leicester, and I think maybe it's the off-field stuff and the fact that they're already out of both cup competitions, so there's not much to play for
That's
anymore.
Another thing that made Puel really unpopular. I mean, he would say that everybody's tired because we just played all these games over Christmas. Everybody needs a rest. Again, it's being pragmatic, but not necessarily popular.
Agreed, because again, as I said earlier, it's too thin but then too bloated at the same time, this Leicester team.
Okay. Oh, one final thing I would say on this as well is the reason that I'm quite positive about them and gave them a good grade is because they're 7th. It is worth noting that 7th spot in the Premier League, there's a lot of rotating, right? So we could have done this another time and Leicester would have been much lower down the table.
Yeah, and if they had been, then they would have probably gotten a different grade.
Fair enough. Okay, today's show is sponsored by Robinhood.
I've heard of them.
You may have heard about Robinhood earlier this week. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. Don't you even try paying commission, Taylor. They won't let you.
I tried. They wouldn't let me. They said, no commission for you. And I appreciated that because, as they promise, it's a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence.
Yep.
Because, I have tried in the past, and it is a little bit like, wait, who do I need to contact? And do I need to pick up a corded phone and call somebody and scream sell into it?
Do I need to slick all my hair back and wear a shirt that is blue with a white collar?
Waffles. Tasty waffles. That's what I want everyone to buy. But Robinhood instead makes it far easier, and I am very grateful for that.
I mean, we make jokes, but it really is. I think it's interesting to take the world of stocks and buying stocks out of the domain of the type of people we just described.
Yeah, suspenders
I'm sure
and
not
ties.
everybody's like that,
and
it's been 30 years. But
I picture white shirts with blue collars. I
Did
feel like
I
that
do
is
the
a
other way
late.
around?
Is that like in the late 80s, early 90s situation? Yeah, sure.
Did I do it the other way around when I just
I'm not sure.
mentioned it?
Oh, did you say that
Oh,
too?
were you not listening? Okay.
I was busy trying to picture my own version of a Wall Street jerk. It's most of The Big Short is, I guess, what it is.
Lovely. So yeah, again, no cost, no commissions.
Yeah.
That's the part I really like. There's also easy to understand charts and market data. I would imagine if you're used to looking at sort of football tables and transfer fees and players' transfer market value, you can easily sort of adapt into looking at how stocks are doing.
And I think, if anything, if you enjoy that, it can be a little bit frustrating because whatever you're told is the value online doesn't necessarily actually tell you if that player is going to cost that much or if they could be gotten for that much. Whereas here, you can discover new stocks the way you would discover a new player, but then you can get the actual valuation and you can track how that progresses over time because you've got the personalized news feed that keeps you up to date with all of your stocks and your potential stocks in your portfolio.
So if you've been thinking about getting into buying stocks, we think this is the way to do it. You can sort of learn as you go, as you build your portfolio. And you can also get started with a free stock. Ooh. So if you go to soccer.robinhood.com, that's soccer.robinhood.com, Robinhood will give our listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. So they'll get you started at soccer.robinhood.com, soccer.robinhood.com.
There we go. And we didn't even have to spell anything. So thank you to Robinhood for sponsoring today's episode. Now, Doe Grove, we've done some C's and some D's and some D minuses. I'm going to guess we're going to give some better grades for these final two teams.
So it's Liverpool and then Manchester City.
Yeah.
Okay. So the top of the table is concentrated in this part of the alphabet.
A little bit.
Let's start with Liverpool.
A+.
I've also gone A+.
What else could it be? Yeah.
Well, okay, so you could make an argument that because they finally lost a game, they lost to Manchester City, and now the title race, instead of being 10 points clear, they're only 4 points ahead. You can make a very harsh argument that they only deserve an A instead of an A+.
You could. I'm not.
I'm not either, because I think there's so many other positive things about Liverpool this season, not least just how competitive they were during that game. I know they finished 2-1 Man City, but those teams were equal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
They were on level footing, level pegging, and it just happened that Man City won. It was a thrilling game.
I would agree with that entirely. Okay. But I would also say the reason why I stick with an A+ is because go back to either the end of the Champions League last year or this summer, and imagine talking to a Liverpool fan about this team right now, back then, and it's oh no, Alisson's perfect. He's doing everything you wanted to do. Naby Keita, he's not even playing that much because they don't quite need him yet, and he hasn't. Fabinho, he let him sit and get adjusted. Still top of the table by 4 points.
Wijnaldum's even better.
Yeah, didn't lose a game until the new year. Virgil van Dijk is the greatest defender of all time. I think it's just I feel like in every single department,
he might be the greatest defender in the Premier League this season.
Yes, I would agree with that. I genuinely had to think for a moment. I think I would agree.
I like how you checked it just in case.
I did, but it's also the case they made it out of what I think was a tricky group in the Champions League. I know we're talking about the Premier League, but to be on top by 4 points ahead of a Man City team that destroyed everybody last season. Yep. I think at this point last year they were up by 14, or they were out in front by 14, Man City. So for Liverpool to be out front the way they are, I think it's especially interesting because so many previews I read when I went back and looked at what the predictions were for this season were maybe Liverpool can challenge, but only if they improve drastically and Man City drop off tremendously. And I don't think Man City have dropped off that much.
No, Liverpool just improved drastically. So here's why I want to definitely give them an A+. It's that Klopp, we've talked about it a lot already, tactical evolution, because we all thought it was going to be 4-3-3 forever. under Klopp, right? It was going to be heavy metal, gegenpressing, in your face. Like, these players are definitely going to get exhausted forever. Instead, he had a tweak this year. He's rolled out that 4-3-3 in a more conservative way many times, which makes Liverpool very hard to play through. So it's almost like they don't have to go pressing. You almost just run straight into them because they're so well structured, and then they counter-attack you, right? They don't have to chase you down. You just can't get through them. Yeah. But then they counter-attack you in that same terrifying kind of style. And then he's got the switch to the 4-2-3-1, which I am a big fan of, because you get those fullbacks high and suddenly you've got all kinds of players in your half.
And did you already talk about their defensive performance from a statistical standpoint before we move into their attack?
I haven't, no, but they obviously have the best defense in the Premier League, right? They've conceded, 10 goals?
10 goals. The next closest would be Chelsea with 16, which is a lot. A big difference there.
So if we're going just pure stats, right, 10 goals in 21 games is less than half a goal a game?
Yep. And you can't even score a half goal, Daryl. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's a fun science fact.
A lot of mine are counted as half goals.
So I just think, but that's just so worth pointing out, because again, think about Liverpool teams of a year ago or 18 months ago, and it was like maybe when they shore up that defense and get one more kind of strong midfielder and maybe get a goalkeeper, maybe it'll all click. It feels like it will, and they have, and it feels like it is.
Yeah, it's very strange to look at the signings that Klopp made this summer, and I think he's kind of 100%, right? So Virgil van Dijk came in last January, so he had 6 months to get himself sorted. But Fabinho, Keita, Shaqiri, Alisson, they've all been a huge part of what Liverpool have done in this first half of the season.
I would say maybe not huge for Naby Keita, but maybe he's getting there. But Fabinho is one who I would say that's the only one that I still have a slight question mark around is Naby Keita, just because it feels like he hasn't quite endeared himself to Jurgen Klopp to the point where he is kind of always going to be in consideration for that starting 11.
I would agree that he hasn't forced his way into a guaranteed starting 11 spot, but he's never played and looked out of place.
True,
right?
You're right. He definitely isn't a flop by any stretch, and he's definitely not one of those players who he's played 2 games and it doesn't look like it's going well.
And maybe the same for Fabinho, right? He didn't play for a long time, but Klopp has definitely sort of introduced him gradually and in a way that works for Fabinho. And in hindsight, the 4-2-3-1 thing was all built around long-term planning in terms of Fabinho works in the double six situation. We're going to get him in and we're going to start doing that. And I'm super impressed by the way Liverpool have had a whole different shape with Mohamed Salah at centre forward, Firmino playing as a number 10, makes room for Shaqiri on the right. To do that and be even more successful and look even more terrifying than last season, I think is part of the great leap forward that has happened.
I agree.
To use some very communist terminology.
Hey, whatever. And I don't have the number.
It didn't even take 5 years.
Was Shaqiri £12 million?
I don't know. It wasn't too much. It was
because of the relegation clause or whatever. But you look at that, and that's a player who exactly, or it makes sense why you'd go after that player, especially given what happened to Salah at the end of last season. You want somebody who can come in and score those goals. But it's it's the same thing as Fabinho in my mind. It's with Shaqiri, where you're telling that player clearly, look, we need you to get accustomed to this. We want you to play this way. You're not quite there yet. Klopp said that publicly, but it wasn't that sort of this player's way off the way it might be with another coach. And so it felt like he kind of built those two players into a situation where now they can come in and operate completely effectively. And I would say I look at those two because I then look at Alisson as a player who those guys they had courted and they'd gone after or they got for cheap. Here with Alisson, it feels like the best example of the modern Premier League of if you recognize a weakness, you recognize a vulnerability, and you know that you've got to deal with it, spend that money and deal with it. And that's what they did because Alisson...
But targeted, right? You don't just spend blind and buy 3 random goalkeepers. You identify exactly who you want and you wait if you have to wait and you get who you want.
Which they did. I think Roma initially quoted them $90 million last January, and then they kept that offer going, and then eventually they dropped it down to the point when Liverpool bought. But now Alisson, I checked this, has their 10th most passes of any player on the Liverpool team this season. That's ahead of a player like, say, Sadio Mane. And to me, that makes sense because he's on the ball a lot, but he's very comfortable on the ball. I think has only created or given up 2 goals from his own error, which is still progress from Mignolet and Karius. So it feels like they've bought wisely. So yes, they've spent a lot of money, but that's what you have to do, and it's well spent. Yeah.
The final thing I would say is that it feels to me like this team is calibrated perfectly in terms of when we pressure. When we have to do that, when we're structured and when we just are hard to play through, and when we just have the ball for endless periods and you can't get the ball off of us, right?
Yeah. And go ahead.
Well, just that there used to be this idea, at least in my head, that there's the heavy metal football thing, and that just wasn't sustainable for 90 minutes and certainly not for 38 games. And so, but now that it's much more nuanced and flexible and in many ways interesting because you're not quite sure what you're going to get, I think it's a title-winning team.
All right, so here's my question then.
Yeah.
Dejan Lovren leaves the FA Cup game yesterday in like the 6th minute or something like that. I think it's a hamstring injury. Uncertain how long he'll be out. Joe Gomez already out. Joel Matip already out. Suddenly there is that defensive issue.
Yes.
Ryan Bailey, our friend, writing for The Athletic. He
They're
did make
play
the
him?
point. Yeah, they are. He's going to go in there. No, he made the point that I'm sure you've seen many people make. 8 of the last 10 teams that were leading at Christmas went on to win the league. The 2 that didn't were both Liverpool.
Yeah, but,
so I look at those 2 things, and I say all that just to set this up to ask you, do you see a situation in which Liverpool slip, or do you think this title race goes down to the final day? Or maybe it doesn't, and Liverpool just kind of win the title by 6 or 7 points.
I mean, I see it as a possibility, but not because it's Liverpool, because I don't think this Liverpool team is those Liverpool teams, right?
I would agree with that
different
entirely.
To the Brendan Rodgers and earlier Liverpool teams or Rafa Benitez teams. I think the centre-back thing might be a problem, though, because one thing I had to talk about in my notes was just how brilliant Joe Gomez was at centre-back and how that was a stroke of genius from Klopp and also a perfect implementation of a player that fit the system because he covers ground really quickly and is really good with the ball. And to lose him is a big deal, right? They look worse defensively with Dejan Lovren.
100%.
Than with Joe Gomez. But then if there's no replacement for Lovren, then they look worse without Lovren.
One would think.
I've forgotten the kid's name, but the kid that replaced... There was a teenager, essentially, that replaced Dejan Lovren against Wolves. But maybe not so out of place because there was a load of other teenagers that played against Wolves.
Do you feel like it's going to be Fabinho? I feel like we're going to see some Fabinho at centre-back.
He did play centre-back against Wolves, so that might be the next thing for Liverpool. Either they go and make an emergency centre-back signing, but I don't know that they've got anyone identified. Because we talked earlier about how all these transfers were like planned out and identified and it's exactly the right player. And if it's more of an emergency style thing, I'm going to assume they haven't been able to put the work and the time in to get the next perfect guy to play centre-back. So maybe it would be better if it was just Fabinho for a little while.
Yeah, I think it may well be. And I would say this, and I promise this is not a reverse jinx, Liverpool fans. I think at worst, this goes down to the wire and it is a title race to like the last couple days.
Yeah.
And then I do think there's a decent chance that Liverpool just hold on and win the title. The only thing that I think could cause a major problem, we've talked about him a bunch.
The absence of Dominic Solanke.
The absence of Virgil van Dijk.
Oh.
And that's the big one. Again, in that same article, Ryan Bailey pointed out, when Van Dijk injured his ankle in the 2016-2017 season, obviously then with Southampton, I think they lost 7 of their next 16 games, having performed very well to that point in the season. Obviously, if you remove Virgil van Dijk from this Liverpool equation, both in terms of like the attacking threat on set pieces, but just what he brings to that defense, that is the only thing that I think could really throw this team off. Because again, say Mohamed Salah gets injured and is out for 3 weeks, I do think Xherdan Shaqiri can come in and perform. Maybe not quite on that level, but close enough to it. You've got the rotation in there. And so it does feel like if you bubble wrap Virgil van Dijk when he's not playing soccer, which is what I have looking forward as something they should do, is just protect that man if you want to stay in that title race.
So any other ideas for what they should do going forward? Because unless there is a centre-back that they really do know will fit the system and be able to hit the ground running, I can't think of anything that they need to change.
No, and if anything, they've already made some of the changes. They sold Dom Solanke, as we talked about yesterday, to Bournemouth. They've loaned Nathaniel Clyne as well. I believe Klopp came out today and said we're not going to try to replace either one of them, that we're going to kind of promote young players.
Interesting.
And then the other one, I think Oxlade-Chamberlain just returned to training. Don't know if he'll be able to like really make it back in time for the end of the season. Who knows? But Adam Lallana seems like he's nearing full fitness. And so you've got these players who can play a role within the team, who are up to speed, who know what's going to be asked of them. And I would say, at least for Adam Lallana, aren't going to be like, okay, I'm starting now, right? Like, it doesn't feel like he knows where he is in the pecking order. And so it feels like it's going to be players brought back into this, like the first team that gel right away and make them better than they are currently.
My final shot in the dark is I keep reading about Felipe Coutinho being unsettled at Barcelona. Maybe
my God.
He doesn't quite fit in tactically and he's not always starting. That's a player who obviously has worked with Klopp before and was very successful. If they were just looking to randomly strengthen the team with a player that they already know works, 6-month loan for Felipe Coutinho.
I think that would be a terrible idea.
Do you really?
I really do. I do. I know he's an amazing player. That feels like such an unsettling thing to do, to bring in this world-class player, and now is he going to start every game? Why isn't he starting every game?
I guess, if he's not guaranteed to start, there's kind of no reason to.
That feels like a disruption. If you're going for a high-end loan, I feel like they're probably going to be going for a center-back. Unless Coutinho can play center-back, in which case, it's all who knows what happens.
I would be sending in some crosses against that defense.
I think that's fair.
Okay, ready for our final team? Second in the table.
Yeah.
4 points behind Liverpool, Manchester City.
Yep.
What's your grade for Manchester City?
It's an A, and it's only not an A+ because they're not top of the table.
Mine's an A-.
Okay, all right.
Because they're not top of the table, right?
That's all? That's what takes them from a plus to a minus?
I've got a couple of things that I've realised are weaknesses. It's a lot of it's compared to last season, right?
Yeah.
Last season they were just like destroying everybody in front of them. This season they're not, so it feels weird to not downgrade them at least a little bit.
Okay.
Right? If they were a student and they were getting they were just top of the class last year, and suddenly they're lagging behind someone else a little bit, you'd maybe downgrade that student a little bit.
You probably would.
Yeah.
Yes.
So A-.
Okay.
So it's also about the teenagers. No, I'll get to that in a second, sorry. But it's also about the weaknesses that we've spotted, right? We've started talking about who's the replacement for Fernandinho, right? We weren't doing that last season because I think we didn't even notice that he was so important and irreplaceable.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me interjecting just to say, you're absolutely right. I don't think we did. But I also think it's the case that, again, talking about Liverpool for a moment, like what we were talking about was, they're kind of weak there, but they've got Naby Keita already signed and coming. Like they had already addressed that weakness, found the player they wanted, signed that player, and even though they couldn't get him for a year, it was sort of like they had identified that. Whereas all the speculation right now is, who's that Fernandinho replacement? Do they go after somebody just in case?
And what I've realised is the players they've got in the squad, if you play Fabian Delph or, as they did, John Stones in that position, they're going to offer the same defensive stuff, but not the same then attacking threat that Fernandinho does. If you play Ilkay Gundogan, he's got maybe the same incisive passing, but not the same defensive side of the game.
Agreed.
So there just is no replacement for Fernandinho in that Manchester City team. And obviously they lost games when he wasn't there. Then Kevin De Bruyne went missing for a while with injury. He's back now, basically, right? But then you realise how, even though they've got David Silva and Bernardo Silva and all that, you realise how important Kevin De Bruyne is. So I think I hadn't thought before about how, because I thought they were so deep that particular players, their absence didn't matter. Now I know that they do. Fernandinho's absence matters. Kevin De Bruyne's absence matters.
Yeah, and I would say
this is nitpicking from the team that's still obviously very, very.
Oh yeah, we're definitely picking some nits here. But and I would say the other thing that's interesting to me is when you've got depth, but a lot of that depth is the same player. So on the depth chart at holding midfield after Fernandinho, who would you say is the next holding midfielder?
At holding midfield, I mean, we don't really know.
So
we?
of the names
maybe Ilkay Gundogan.
Okay, so you said him, but then sometimes it's been Fabian Delph, for example. But if it's Fabian Delph, that is right now your first choice left back. So then it's you've got a player who can play 3 different positions, and that's wonderful, and that gives you depth. But if he is playing one of those positions, then that's 2 positions he can't play.
Same with Danilo, right?
Yeah.
Right back, left back.
And I would say same thing with John Stones. I don't know if right now they can afford to take him out and have him play that holding role either, because then you're looking at Laporte and Otamendi.
Or 70 minutes of Vincent Kompany.
Yeah, I mean, and against Liverpool, that card goes another way, and maybe we're all having different stories about Vincent Kompany. So that is an issue for me for sure.
My only other negative point, and we'll get to the positives of Man City maybe in a second, but my only other negative point is you are seeing the teenage exodus, right? So Brahim Diaz is leaving and going to Real Madrid, and by all accounts he's almost been, did we talk about the other day, he's been guaranteed a starting spot at Real Madrid.
And there's no buyback
clause. That's how highly he's rated, there's no buyback clause. Jadon Sancho left, went to Dortmund, and basically proved that he was good enough all along and maybe could have been playing for Manchester City. Phil Foden is essentially getting the crumbs, right? He's not playing, but he's just getting the crumbs of minutes that in things like the FA Cup.
Yes.
Right? So there definitely is a thing of talented youngsters deciding to leave Manchester City because Guardiola is not able to find room for them. And maybe that was an impossible job to begin with, but I want to just take a grade off for that, take a point down, A-.
Maybe he should also find a young English person to play left back, because that's the other vulnerability that I've spotted. Benjamin Mendy, in and out of the squad with injury, is currently out of the squad. I think they're saying
he's on the way back.
In 2 to 3 weeks. He should be back in time for the Champions League against Schalke. But then Oleksandr Zinchenko, who turned down Wolves, I believe, in the offseason because he wanted to stay and challenge. Pep loves him and has spoken highly of him, but also spoke highly of him in relation to high-profile mistakes and how he was able to respond accordingly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like he's rock solid. Fabian Delph, as I said, injuries, suspensions, and then maybe playing other positions. So left back does feel like a potential minor issue. Again, these are nitpicks.
So let's talk about what's good about Manchester City.
Lots.
So just in terms of narrative, the 3 defeats they suffered in December with no Fernandinho, De Bruyne injured and all that sort of stuff, they recovered with that win against Liverpool, right? That win against Liverpool is absolutely huge. It's the reason we're not talking about them being 10 points off the title race. The big thing that when I think about Manchester City this season, the thing I think about is the threat down the wings. And I picture in my head either Leroy Sané absolutely burning down the outside, then cutting back across in either going for goal or cutting back.
Yeah.
Or I picture Raheem Sterling, weirdly, instead of going outside, dribbling inside and finding space and getting himself into the box and then being kind of unstoppable in terms of quick 1-2s or dropping a shoulder and going past someone. So the threat from Leroy Sané and Raheem Sterling, I feel like is
and Riyad Mahrez when he comes in too.
All-time high.
Yep.
Yeah, Mahrez is just spelling them essentially, right?
I mean, and we're not saying anything
threat
new.
level Sané Sterling is red.
Very true. But then, we're also, we're not breaking new ground when I say this,
No.
but, then you're playing the ball into Sergio Aguero, who obviously can score from any position at any time at any given moment.
Yeah.
But, okay, maybe he's misfiring. Well, then you just bring in Gabriel Jesus, and he scores some goals. And yeah, as you said, they've been without Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne can come back in, but then you've got the Silva. They have so much depth and talent when it comes to that attack that it's just because they're slightly performing above or below where they were last year, it feels like, ooh, maybe they've lost a step or two. But in reality, that's a team that I would be very terrified to play.
So I know this is not the end of our Premier League midterm report because there's a whole 7 other teams to talk about on tomorrow's show, right? But I do think it's worth reminding everybody that we're living in kind of a golden age of a season. If this Liverpool team keeps playing like this and this Man City team keeps playing like this, it's going to be thrilling to watch them race each other to the end of the season.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it absolutely is, and I look forward to it, even though I want both of them to lose.
Well, we'll be talking about Manchester United. They're going to be up first on tomorrow's Premier League midterm report.
I echo the sentiment of Paul Scholes. When asked if it was a tough choice when those two were playing, he responded, "Nope, go on, City."
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Gary Neville said the same thing, I think, a couple seasons ago.
I'll tell you honestly, it's much more fun to just watch it as a neutral and not worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, no, and I have been, because that's what you have to do if you're a United fan lately. But it's also
or if you're a professional podcast host with good neutral grounding.
I think we define what a professional podcast host is, at least for the purposes of this show, and I'm good with that. But they are so entertaining that they are, if not must-watch TV, then almost must-watch TV, Man City and Liverpool, respectively.
Almost must-watch. Yeah, there has to be something else really good.
Yeah.
All right. We've got updates from the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. Hello.
Here's the thing I never thought I would say.
Yeah.
If you had to choose, historically, between Man City playing Liverpool and El Clasico, which game you were going to watch, there's really no debate there.
Yeah, until this year.
And now there's not a debate either, but that's because it's gone the other way. And I would much rather watch City-Liverpool than the current iteration of Madrid lose to Barcelona.
Shots fired, unlike Real Madrid strikers.
There we go.
Okay, so the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, we have updates on a handful of talented young players ready to share with our listeners. Would you like to go first, Tyler, or would you like me to go first?
I would like for it to load. Now I can go first. James Porter scouting Oliver Skipp, the 18-year-old English midfielder, not manager, that's what I have written down here, at Tottenham. Oliver Skipp made his second start of the year in a 7-0 win over League Two side Tranmere in the third round of the FA Cup. Skippy, as James calls him, started as the deepest midfielder and conduit for going forward in a flowing 3-4-3 that pinned the opposition back all game. His first assist came on a sharp forward pass that split the lines to Son. His second came after winning a challenge, getting the ball back and playing a nifty pass to Llorente between two defenders at the top of the box.
Jesse Franco is scouting Matteo Retacchio.
There we go.
That's why that was hard. Matteo Retacchio, the 17-year-old Italian-American midfielder for Liverpool.
I think you hit the T's and the Ch's perfectly. So
on the third try. But remember the name, Matteo Retacchio. Jesse says Matteo had an assist as well as some nice chances on goal in the final of the Mercedes-Benz Junior Cup, a U19 indoor tournament
it got weirder.
Played in Germany. Liverpool defeated Rapid Vienna in the final.
Not one of those things made much sense to me.
This is why I love the Scouting Network.
Elijah Chappell scouting Joe Willock, the 19-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Joe started on the left side of a midfield three and scored a brace in Arsenal's 3-0 win over Blackpool in the FA Cup. His first came in the 11th minute when he headed home the rebound after a free kick hit the crossbar. His second was a tight finish after A. Jenkinson cross traveled through the corridor of uncertainty and was missed by a player from both teams before landing at Willock's feet in front of the goal.
Steve Renard is scouting Yuri Tillemans, the 21-year-old Belgian midfielder from Monaco. Steve says Tillemans remains a starter for Thierry Henry's side as they ineffectively battle to climb out of the relegation zone. That's assuming a 2-0 loss to 20th place Guingamp can be considered ineffective.
Yikes.
Gazzetta dello Sport reports that AC Milan have their eyes on a January move for Yuri Tillemans. He's also got Cesc Fabregas to deal with. It'll be interesting to see if Fabregas means if Fabregas's entrance means Tielemans' exit.
Can we talk for a minute about Monaco specifically?
Yeah.
Did it feel to you like Thierry Henry was going to turn this around and become like the next kind of hyped manager? Because I really thought he was going to.
I think maybe you're just falling for the celebrity aspect of it.
I don't know.
Right?
I think it's because of Belgium and the reported influence he had in some of the tactics and their attacking approach in the World Cup. It felt like, okay, he does actually have things to offer.
I would question, there are probably plenty of assistant managers that have a lot of influence because they didn't used to score a load of goals for Arsenal and Barcelona. They don't get any spotlight.
I never thought Thierry Henry would go full Gary Neville, but that appears to be the way this is going. So there it is.
It is a tough job.
I suppose it is. Keith Sparks scouting João Felix, the 19-year-old Portuguese attacker for Benfica. João Felix scored 2 goals for Benfica this weekend against Rio Ave in the Primeira Liga. He showed good awareness of space in the box, using his movement to evade markers and get in positions to score. He now has 4 goals in 8 appearances and has been linked with a move away from the Portuguese Giants.
Speaking of Portuguese Giants, if you happen to be scouting a very tall American midfielder with Benfica B, we would love a scouting report about his potential loan move.
That'd be ideal.
If we don't get one, then you and I will talk about it at some point in January.
No, we're honor-bound and contractually bound to only talk about it if a scouting report comes in.
Mark Gardberg is scouting Patrick Schick, the 22-year-old Czech striker for Roma. Mark says this season, Schick, a.k.a. the new Zlatan, has scored twice in 1,400 Serie A minutes. Schick which is not many. No. Schick has hired a mental
it's a lot of minutes.
It's a lot of minutes, not a lot of goals. Yeah, he should play for Huddersfield. Schick has hired a mental coach, a former Microsoft exec, to talk him out of the funk. If it doesn't work, he's a leading candidate, Schick, for the Bidon d'Oro or Bin of Gold award for most disappointing Serie A player. Past winners include Rivaldo, Christian Vieri, Adriano, Quaresma, and Dzeko. So there are worse lists to make.
I would say it feels like Mark maybe went through and cherry-picked the best possible
ones?
names from that, because I know there's some other ones on there that maybe haven't risen to the point where we would be mentioning them here. Final report today comes from Ryan LaRose, scouting Rafael Camacho, 18-year-old Portuguese defender/winger for Liverpool.
Oh, he made an appearance, right?
He sure did. Rafa Camacho has been so impressive with the Liverpool U23s that Klopp allowed Nathaniel Klein to go on loan to Bournemouth, as we talked about. And I think we said very briefly, but just in case to reiterate, I think Camacho was one of the people that Klopp specifically said, we don't want to deprive him of minutes. Maybe shots fired at Man City. So that's why they're not going to bring in a replacement. Maybe Camacho gets minutes. That said, he did start Camacho at right back against Wolves in the FA Cup. Rafa attempted to get forward early and often, but found few opportunities to attack and looked a bit flustered in their 2-1 loss. Rumors have emerged that Camacho is to be loaned out to Sporting Lisbon for the rest of the season.
Maybe not so much now, though, if Nathaniel Klein's gone. I guess we'll see. Maybe Klopp was talking about a different right back, but I can't imagine he would be if this is the guy he started in the FA Cup.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay, well, thank you to everybody for the scouting reports. If you'd like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. If you just want to support the show, you can sign up and be a silent scout. A lot of people do that. It just means that essentially you contribute financially to the show. We don't give you a player to scout because maybe you just don't want to do it, which is absolutely fine because, we want to make the money.
Yeah, we do. Can I give you my best impression of a silent scout?
Go for it.
Nailed it.
Very good.
Thank you.
It could have been longer, though. All right, we'll be back Wednesday evening with the third part of our Premier League midterm report. But we've also got some travel to do on Wednesday.
Yeah, we do. You want to record it on the airplane?
I do not, because it will be noisy.
Yes, it will. I think we should do it, though. I'm sure everybody would love it.
So we're off to Chicago for the United Soccer Coaches Convention.
Would you rather have a crying baby or nerds yelling about soccer on the airplane?
I mean, I'd rather have nerds yelling about soccer.
Okay.
Even if they're not us.
I'm not sure I would. Depends on their level of sobriety, the nerds.
Depends who the nerds are.
Yes.
We are hoping to land at the convention in time to see Ian Barker's new rondo type.
Yeah.
I've forgotten the name of the session, but it's essentially rondos but extra.
Is it 4v4 plus 3?
I think that will be part of it. I looked that up. It's really, really good. It's very Guardiola-ish. So we're going to see all kinds of good stuff at the convention.
Heckle them.
As well as the MLS draft and the NWSL draft, which we'll be doing coverage for the Top Draw Soccer Show. Taylor, Travis, and Daryl should be all united on one Top Draw Soccer Show.
I didn't love the grimace when you said my name just then. You smiled at Travis, you smiled at Daryl. Taylor is what happened there.
That was coincidental.
You got a long way to go to be a silent scout, my friend.
I promise you. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.